Hello, this is the Harvard Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. So, feedback, important. Reach out to me. And I have those links provided for you in this episode, like I always do. And I'm growing and I'm looking to where I am on all of the major platforms, but the ones that I'm on for now, here's a list of some of them. Spotify, Spreaker, of course, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Amazon Music, just to name a few. All right, so this episode is all about the origins of sweater weather. Well, that's a little bit joke there, but sweater weather. Some people just like, hey, the look, the feel of sweaters. So I'm going to give my thoughts about it. I'm going to summarize a little bit about what I found out about the origin and history of it. And here we go. Okay, so I'm just going to jump into the AI-generated response and then go from there. All right, so origin of sweater. The origin of sweaters can be traced back to the early 19th century when fishermen in Ireland and Scotland wore them as practical garments to keep them warm in the high seas. So these other sweaters were made from thick, heavy wool and often featured intricate patterns and cable knit designs, which helped make them water resistant. All right, so the knitted garments were initially made by the wives of the fishermen and sailors from natural wool, so which retains its oil and protected against the old cold even when damped. So the use of jersey, name of the English Channel Islands of forgive me for the pronunciation, Grisony and Jersey were the first knitted shirts or tunics that were produced, and they were spread throughout Europe, especially among working men. So by the 1890s, the jersey was adopted by athletics in the United States, and they called them sweaters. Now, in the 1920s, designers such as Janine Levin and Gabrielle Coco Chanel introduced the sweaters into their collections, making them fashionable throughout the 20th century. So sweaters in a variety of designs knitted from natural and synthetic fibers were worn by men, women, and children alike. So sweaters have evolved from practical garments to fashionable clothing items, becoming essential in everyday wardrobe. All right, so my thoughts and summaries. And then I'm going to expand and read more facts on it. All right, here we go. Okay, so this is what my take is about the aspects of sweaters here. Okay, so sweaters, like everything else that came out of the necessity of need. So the aspects of the whole thing with practical wear. And so it's quite interesting how that evolves into what we know as and what we think of as today. So, and there are a lot of the aspects of finding and looking at this with the origins and the history. There's also the aspects of folklore within everything, of how that ties back into the traditions of the culture. So specifically with Scotland and English. So as I get into my channel, throughout the years of it, I'm going to start and get into the aspects of sea folklore and everything, because I really appreciate the nature of the beast of that. And what I mean by that is that it really presents a lot of moral compasses with the aspect of will and humanity and strength and courage and so forth. And it goes along the lines with the aspects of me starting this podcast, of me making commentary, talking about aspects in culture, society and so forth, particularly with music and evolving it to other aspects. Because again, with the aspects of the lighthouse is that guide in the midst of the darkness. And then, those sea mentalities, that sea aspects of metaphors, it really is succinct to the way that everything is flowing and showcasing itself in the world and especially in the culture that we're living in today. And so, going back to what I found and discovered, is quite interesting that you tend to realize what you need when you don't have it. And that was a lot of the cases for sweaters, were originally jerseys, because these working men out in the seaport and fishing and gathering and so forth. I mean, if you can imagine, and I'm sure y'all know this, when you, particularly at the fall, winter seasons, when you're out in the mud and the cold, and it's raining and it's misting and then you get water splashed all over you, you can get. It's hard. It's hard, nevertheless, to deal with those conditions. But you run the risk of, if your core temperature isn't protected properly, of getting severely ill. And so, collaborating with the wives and figuring out through trial and error, and then that aspect that I thought that was very interesting to me, finding out about that aspect, and I'm going to go and talk about more details of it after I give all my thoughts and everything, of how intricate that is with the wives of the fishermen of everything, and the working men and everything, of collaborating with them and getting their input and making their materials, instead of, that's out of practicality and reasonability. They couldn't afford to outsource their materials to other people. And so just the aspect of how powerful that is when you have a strong unit that you can rely on to make the materials that you need to get through your work. And that goes a lot along the lines with the aspects of how that a lot of lessons can be learned with the way people move and think about their place and their position in this today and time in our culture now. Excuse me. Now, that's not all lost with the people having a mentality that, to have a strong-knit family and a strong-knit community. It's not all lost. But it's really something to say about a lot of things could be improved with having that aspects of, with the necessity of what you need, you can rely on your family to help you support, to help that family unit to help support you to get through the next step of what you need as far as you with your work and so forth. And then with the aspects of this with your garments or what you need to get through the type of work that you're doing. So again, sweaters is apropos with the month that we're in, February. But it also cultivates a symbol and an aspect to certain people, sweaters. And, that's the whole reason of me creating this episode here. The mentality that people get about sweaters. Some people see sweaters as a sign of comfort. Again, nostalgia here. And some people see sweaters as another piece of luxury fashion that is part of their wardrobe. It just all depends. And then, again, I can't stress this enough. I think that clothing, particularly with the type of fashion and the type of mentality of wearing these clothing, your billboard, it's a walking billboard of a person's personality, how they move, think, and feel, and they're positioning themselves in a culture within themselves of what they wear. And I think sweaters symbolize that. So it's one of those unique things where it's comfortable, it's reliable, it's sustainable, it's durable, but at the same time, it's, like I said, with the practicality, at the same time, it moves into the aspects of, now I'm not saying all things that are fashion forward aren't practical, but for the most part, especially when you get into aspects of high-end luxury, that's for sure. And it has that variation with it, with sweaters. And so, particularly, when we get in the house of Coco Chanel and so forth, and people like that, reinventing the aspects of sweaters and how they look and feel, it really started to explode even more so in the 1980s, when it was trendy to wear very bulky items and neon bright colors and so forth. It went with the aesthetics of that time, of the 80s, of being trendy but being comfortable at the same time. So that's something to think about here. All right, so with all of this said that I just said, hey, say that 10 times fast. I'm going to get into the rest of the facts. Here we go. And of course, this source will be provided for you in this episode. Sweater. Outer garments, usually knitted or crocheted, that is worn on the upper part of the body, either pulled over the head or buttoned down in the front or back. Although hand knitted of wool, this has been practiced for about 2,000 years. It was not until the 15th century that the first knit shirts or tunics were produced by the English Channel, as I said. And they were, at that time, named jerseys. So, as I was saying, they were made by the wives of the fishermen and sailors from natural wool, which by retaining its oil protected against the cold, even wet and damp environments. So the use of jersey spread throughout Europe, especially among working men. So in the 1890s, it was adopted by athletes in the U.S., and they were called sweaters. Quite interesting how jerseys, got its name back to specifically with sports and football, how they intertwine with themselves, how you pull slang, jargon, lingo from other cultures, and how that merges itself into a different identity in the U.S. versus across the globe. So the first sweaters were heavy, dark blue pullovers worn before and after athletic contests to protect against the cold. By the 1920s, designers, as I was saying, Janine Levin and Gabrielle Coco Chanel introduced sweaters to their collection. Throughout the 20th century, sweaters in the varieties of designs needed from natural and synthetic fibers were again worn from everywhere, from men, women to children. So the fashion industry, here we go. Fashion industry, multi-billion-dollar global enterprise devoted to the business of making and selling clothes. Some observers distinct between the fashion industry, which makes high fashion, and the apparel industry, which makes ordinary clothes or mass fashion. But by the 70s, the boundaries between them had blurred. See, this is what I'm saying about the interesting take of how sweaters have a multifaceted identity when it comes to fashion and clothing and where it fits, everyday use, high fashion, and so forth. All right. I was saying by the 70s, it blurred. Excuse me. So fashion is best defined simply as the styles of clothing and accessories worn by any given time by groups of people. There may appear to be differences between the expensive designer fashion shown on the runways of Paris or New York, and the mass-produced sportswear and street styles sold in malls and markets around the world. However, the fashion industry encompasses the design, manufacturing, distributing, and marketing, retail advertising, and then the promotion of all types of apparel, whether it be from men to women to children's fashion, from the most rare and expensive haute couture, it says high sewing, and designer fashions to ordinary everyday clothing, from couture ball gowns to casual sweatpants. Sometimes the broader term fashion industry is used to refer to a myriad of industries and services that employ millions of people internationally. So the fashion industry is a product of the modern age, which prior to the 19th century, virtually all clothing was handmade for individuals, either as home production or in order from dressmakers to tailors. So by the beginning of the 20th century, with the rise of new technologies such as sewing machines, and you could match with the aspects and building in the innovations in the tech with sewing machines, you could start to get into the reality of mass producing products. All right, particularly with clothes and sweaters here. So, the rise of global capitalism and the development of factory systems of a production and the proliferation of retail outlets such as department stores, clothing had increasingly come to be mass-produced and standard sizes and sold at fit prices. Although the fashion industry developed first in Europe and then America, today it's an international and highly globalized industry, with clothing often designed in one country, manufactured in another, and sold in a third. So it goes on to add how this is interwoven and interworked about, being outsourced out to China, Vietnam, Italy. Italy is one of the fashion capitals of the world, and then getting back to the United States. But also, I got some comments about that. That's one thing to when the outsourcing stuff into America, and it's quite interesting. That's going to be an interesting transition and change, that takes into effect, gradually. This is going to be a gradual process here with tariffs. So it's going to get back to the aspects of, to me and to other people who think and have this mentality of getting back to U.S. built. Because with U.S. built, you got that aspect of having control of making materials on your own and knowing where they come from and knowing how to with the aspects of where the source is coming from and talking to the people and making sure it's right and durable and you trust the material that you got, and then shipping that out to the people and they know it's a reliable source because it was built in your home ground. And that's something, when you get the aspects of tariffs and getting that back, I think that's going to reshape the aspects of American wear here. All right, so I'm going to end by saying these things. So in the 21st century, those processes are highly automated. The processes are now highly automated and carried out by control high-speed machinery. So, yeah, again, with the aspect of technology being even more advanced, specifically with the aspects of having to automate and control, code everything, getting the aspects of coding and pinpointing specifically, precisely how to cut, and then, getting it more precision and to manufacturing things. That's quite interesting. All right, so a large sector of the textile industry produces fabrics for use in apparel. So both natural fibers such as wool, cotton, silk, and linen, and synthetic fibers such as nylon, acrylic, and polyester are used. So a growing interest in sustainability in fashion or eco-fashion led to a greater use of environmentally friendly fabrics such as hemp. High-tech synthetic fabrics counter such properties as moisture wicking. All right, so it goes into the mechanics of everything. So fabrics are produced with other manufacturing aspects to finish the touch. All right, so let me end by saying this. All right, so here we go. So the next stage of production involves the assembly of garments here with technology and innovation, including the development of computer-guided machinery, which results into the automation of some stages of garment assembly. So nevertheless, you don't get that human touch anymore, essentially. So for the location of their factories where issues of industry safety and the exploration of workers often rise, the fashion industry in New York City was dominated by sweatshops, which was located in the Lower East Side until the Triangle Sweat Waste Fire of 1911 led to greater unionization and regulation of the industry. See, again, these practices getting into formation and to sort of protecting the workers. Not other countries feel the same way with protecting their workers, and that's why I was saying again about those tariffs, getting those tariffs back, and having a lot of things, U.S. built. You get again the aspects of things American made, and then with American made, protecting the workers that are doing it, and then the morality boost up. And that's a good rule of thumb anyway. Besides, that should be common sense to protect your workers. But I'm saying that's a beauty, and that's why people want to come to America, because this is the land of the free. If you want it, you can get it. And then of course, there's caveats to all of that. If people don't want to give you the opportunity, it's unfortunate. Sometimes you're up, the creek. But for the most part, you make your way, you work hard, you can get that. But at the same time, the aspects of protecting and safety is rule of thumb. It comes with being an American worker. And that's something to consider and think about here. The aspects of how that's really it shows its ugly head in the fashion and the textile industry. So in the late 20s, let me say that again. In the late 20th century, China emerged as the world's largest producer of clothing because it is low labor cost and highly disciplined workforce. Assembly garments go through various processes, collective known as finishing. So these include the addition of decorative elements, embroidery, beading, buttons, and buttonholes, hooks, eye snaps, zippers, and so forth. So, for much of the period following World War II, trade in textiles and garments was strictly regulated by importing countries, which imposed quotas and tariffs. So, these protection measures, which were intended ultimately without success. to prevent textile and clothing production from moving from high-wage to low-wage countries were gradually abandoned, and they began in the 80s. So they were replaced by a free trade approach under the regulation of the World Trade Organization and other international regulation bodies that recognize the competitive advantage of low-wage countries, but also the advantage provided to consumers in rich countries through the availability of highly affordable apparel. The advent of this and the aspects of inexpensive air freight also made it possible for production to be closely tied to market conditions, even across the globe, spanning distances. Although usually not considered part of the apparel industry for trade and statistical purposes, the manufacture and sale of accessories such as shoes and handbags and underwear are closely aligned with the fashion industry. As with garments, the production of accessory ranges from very expensive luxury goods to inexpensive mass-produced items like apparel. Manufacturing accessories production tends to gravitate to low-wage environments. Now, producers of high-end accessories, especially handbags, are plagued by competition from counterfeit goods. The nickname for that is knockoffs, sometimes produced using inferior materials in the same factories as the authentic goods. So the trade in such imitation goods is illegal under various international garments, but it is difficult to control. It costs name brand manufacturers hundreds of millions of dollars annually in lost sales. All right, so this reaches the end. I'd like to know your thoughts about this episode and your thoughts about the aspects of sweater manufacturers and so forth and the input that it has in our society. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'll have the source provided for you in this episode. So this reaches the end of the Heartbeat Light. All right, so tune in, turn up, and definitely take care. Bye-bye for now.